Yeah, so welcome everybody to our newest edition of the EU Policy Brief. It's a new format we introduced this year to keep you better up to date on what is happening on the EU agenda when it comes to disability. Uh, yeah, um, yeah. Here you see our banner. It's also called a policy talk now. And here a quick overview of the agenda. Um, to say my topic has changed a bit. I will talk about legal capacity because this is more up to date at the moment. Then Kamil will talk about youth policy developments in the EU. And Ines will talk about the ENIL strategic plan 2026-2029 and implications for our policy work. Yeah, the idea is to keep our contributions rather short, so there are enough time for questions and comments from you. Yeah, so I'll proceed with my topic, impacting the EU agenda on legal capacity. Um, so, um, yeah, so what is this about? So we have been doing for over a year now a campaign for legal capacity. The reason why we have been doing this is a thing called the 2000 Hague Convention. This is an international agreement between countries on what happens if a person is allegedly in need of protection, if this person is involved in a cross-border situation. So standing between two countries or moves, has to go to another country, or maybe has relatives in two countries and it's not clear where the person is going to stay. So it's about measures to be taken in such a situation. The problem is it is a pre-UNCPD document, and this is using a very outdated understanding of protection. It essentially equals the privation of legal capacity with protection. So it is following the older concept that with certain types of disabilities, or yeah, mostly that, um, you don't have the faculties anymore to know what your interests are. Yeah, and yeah, the EU is intending, the member states are intending to implement this convention in the European Union through a legal instrument called the Regulation on the Protection of Vulnerable Adults. So yeah, what is this about? The key to understanding the problem is to focus on the measures the Hague Convention and the regulation are talking about. So what measures are to be taken if a person doesn't have the faculties allegedly to take care of their own interests? For example, the person is to be placed under the protection of an authority, to be placed under guardianship, curatorship, or analogous institutions. Decisions can be taken concerning the placement of the adult in an establishment or other place where protection can be provided. And for also, these are all examples, it's not a complete list. Or also the plan to have protection registers means a register where measures directed to the protection of an adult, more conferred powers of representation have been registered. Yeah, all these represent substantial problems. Yeah, I think I don't have to go. I don't know. I don't think I have to go into too much detail. All this is in contradiction to the UNCPD, and it's also, it's very bad for people, also empirically. being under guardianship creates a lot of problems, and being an institution, so with an establishment, they mean institutions. Yeah, this creates a lot of problems. Protection registers, having the idea is to have yeah, lists, databases, EU-wide accessible databases for authorities, so they can easily, if an adult in alleged need of protection shows up, I don't know, somebody in France who is German, that they can easily look up if they're under guardianship or not. Yeah, this creates serious data protection problems. Yeah, because this is very personal information. And also, we don't want to make it easier for authorities to enforce these kind of rules. Yeah, because this is a strong need for action. ENIL has been very active since 2024. We knew from the start that the ideal outcome would be to stop the implementation of the Hague Convention entirely, but we knew from the start that that was not at all realistic. We would not have the power to stop that. Um, More realistic is, though, to change the approach of the regulation. There were strong legal arguments in favor of why this actually needs to happen. So the approach was to change the spin, the basic approach, from substituted to supported decision making. So to get everything that would constitute deprivation of legal capacity out and get supported decision making in. That was the plan. And we were very active to achieve this. Yeah, the CRPD committee was involved, also the UN Special Rapporteur, also independent experts, a disability law professor from Germany called Professor Degener. What was a very important step that we managed to agree on joint amendments to this regulation, together with a large group of important other disability organizations. Yeah, and it's important to highlight that ENIL had a very strong role in this coalition, strong influence on the amendments. Yeah, and we had many meetings. We have been talking with a lot of MEPs in the European Parliament, and also very active communication with member state governments. And now, since this briefing is about also what is happening in terms of EU policy, where do we stand at the moment? So how did EU policy change or was impacted? We have two important milestones. The first is the so-called partial general approach of the EU Council. As background, the EU has two institutions or configurations which decide about law. One is the member states in the EU Council, and a partial general approach or a general approach is if they have agreed how a law, a legislation, how it should look like. Yeah, if they have like a final version of how it should be in their eyes. And there was quite a very limited acceptance of supported decision making. We were, despite many efforts, we were not very successful there. But there were some slight additions. For example, the text that talked about measures to support an adult in exercising his or her legal capacity, or powers of representation granted by an adult. This might sound a bit legally complicated, but yeah, the fact that the text then talked about not measures taken to decide about the adult, but some willingness to talk about measures initiated by the adult. Important element of supported decision making is to change who is initiating things, who has the initiative. Is it other people like an authority, or is it the disabled person themselves who decide what's happening? But there was no removal of substituted decision making. For example, the text still listed measures such as placing the adult under the protection of an authority or guardianship, curatorship in analogous institutions. However, very recently we have an additional result. The legal Committee of Legal Affairs of the European Parliament, they agreed, so this is the second legislative chamber in the EU. You always, to agree on a law, you need both the agreement of the Parliament and the EU Council. And the European Parliament, they completed their version of how the legislation should look like. So both the Parliament and the Council, they essentially take what was proposed by the Commission and change it. So they come to a legislation which looks like they would like it to be. And so the Parliament, they finished the report and decided how the legislation should look like in their eyes. And there we had some very good success. They fully accepted, supported decision making. And I presenting some examples. For example, they accepting the voluntary nature instead of saying the termination of the incapacity of an adult and the institution of the protective regime. It now says measures to provide access by adults to the support they may require in exercising their legal capacity. Access by adults to the support they may oh no, so I doubled here. Sorry. So access by adults to the support they may require in exercising their legal capacity. And also breaking the inability approach. Instead of saying powers of representation means powers granted by an adult either under an agreement or by unilateral act to be exercised when the adult is not in a position to protect his or her interest. Powers of representation granted by adults for their support or representation to be exercised when those adults require support in protecting their interests. So here also the initiative, who has the initiative, has changed. It's now powers of representation are now granted by the adult for their support. It's important here to keep in mind, we also know from a legal standpoint, it would not be, or it would be impossible to eliminate all the terminology which is not inappropriate. For example, powers of representation. That's a key terminology in the Hague Convention, the 2000 Hague Convention. So we couldn't get that out. It has to be in the regulation, but we can change what it means. So we can change the definition. So instead of defining powers of representation as the institution of a protective regime or an unilateral act, we can change the initiative, change what it means. So it's no longer an unilateral act, the adult decides. Also, always when it comes to legal capacity, property, the right to one's property is a key issue, part of the reason why guardianship is so problematic. You lose your right to your own property, so then the guardian, if you own something, I don't know, a car, a house, anything, the guardian can then decide what will happen with the property. And then you might be propertyless, which is very bad. So instead of saying the designation and functions of any person or body, having charge of the adult's person or property, representing or assisting the adult. It now says the designation and functions of any person or body providing support in decision-making to the adult with regard to property or other forms of assistance. So instead of somebody disposing of your property, the idea is to have support in deciding about the property. And what is very positive also, also the EU Council accepted to a limited extent to add supported decision-making alongside substituted decision-making, like to have two options. But the UNCPD does not foresee two options. There's only one option, supported decision-making. But the Legal Affairs Committee supported our strong recommendation not only to add supported decision-making, but also to get substituted decision-making out of the regulation. That's very important. And the committee went along with this. So basically all of the measures which are problematic, they are proposing just to remove them from the text, like the placing the adult under the protection of judicial or administrative authority. They want to delete it. Guardianship, curatorship, and analogous institutions to be deleted. Decisions concerning the placement of the adult in an establishment or other place where protection can be provided to be deleted. And also, actually, probably the biggest success. Like most of the things, the other things, these things, they sound bad, but they would not have led to this was just procedural. These registers, they would have led to legal change within countries. So every EU country would have had to introduce these registers where information about measures like guardianship or institutionalization of everybody who is affected by them would have been listed. So this would have been really a big data protection problem. And the parliament is going along with also removing them. So yeah, that's quite good. For me, actually, also this outcome is positively surprising because the draft report was not so good. But we have to thank the two shadow rapporteurs. They must have really turned things around. The main rapporteur was not very open, but the shadow rapporteurs apparently were. And they must have been very effective to get so much changes in. It's very positive. Yeah. Another question, we are not at the end of things already. So we have two important milestones now. The EU Council and Parliament both have presented their versions of the regulation. But now to finalize things, they need to agree on a joint text, which is always a big hurdle, as you can imagine. They need to negotiate a compromise. But the good news is the final result. It will definitely have to be better than what the council first presented, than their general approach. They will, if the negotiators are good, they will make sure at least half the parliament's position will be taken into account. That, if not more, that means it is already certain that there will be supported decision-making in the final text to a certain extent. I think it's quite likely that the registers will gonna go because also some member states in the council are not happy about them. So it's already certain that there will be an impact. We can already say this. Of course, an outcome, also possible outcome is that they don't reach an agreement, but this means that the regulation would not be coming at all, or sometimes they take 7 or 8, 10 years to reach an agreement. And yeah, if the regulation is delayed for so long or doesn't come at all, I think we would not mind about that at all. So yeah, what will result? It will definitely be better, much better than what we had at the beginning, which is already good. At least we will have time until the second half of 2026 to do some more work, to see if we can raise the bar a bit further. We will certainly be continuing to talking with the Commission, the Parliament, and national governments. Kind of a key challenge we have in this whole issue. When it comes to legal capacity, this is typically not in the hands of disability rights experts, but of civil law experts. And so far, they have not taken part in the whole UNCPD discourse concepts. For them, the idea of supported decision making, I know for us it's hard to imagine, but for them this sounds crazy, like a crazy concept that a person with a psychosocial or intellectual impairment could still take charge of their own affairs. For them, it's like crazy. They genuinely don't understand this. But there's only a certain chance, because lack of understanding, there is a certain possibility to do something about this. So we can try to establish a dialogue and to raise awareness. But for that, we also need to give them a chance to present their version of things. Yeah, if we just talk to them, it won't be enough. Yeah. Yeah. What's also okay, this is my last slide. In between, since yeah, something that has not been taken into account yet in everything he was doing. In the meanwhile, we had support from the CRPD committee, quite strong support, because the EU concluding observations came out, and the CRPD committee is saying very clearly it calls on the EU to do not proceed with the ratification, with joining the Hague Convention, and to not proceed with this regulation on the protection of vulnerable adults. Yeah. So this is something which has not been factored in actually at all. For some people, it will make a difference. It might, for some not. So, but this is certainly something which still has to be communicated also from others of our side. Yeah. Okay, that's all from my part. You can ask questions later. I hand over to my colleague Kamil now.
Thank you,
Kamil,
Flo.
are you not coordinator? Are you officer?
So- Well, that's the official name. Yes. So, yeah, hello everyone, and thank you, Florian. My name is Kamil Goungor, and I work as a policy and movement support officer for ENIL. And today we will discuss youth policy developments in the EU. And why we will do it? Because, as you know, at ENIL, we value a lot our young generation and our young members. We have a strong youth network, and we try to work a lot with them in order also to build the future of the movement. So youth developments are important for us, and we do quite a lot of work on the topic. So it's good to see a little bit what's happening in Europe when it comes to young people and how it is relevant to us. And today we will see things very epigrammatically, very briefly because of the time constraints, but to just have an overview, and in the future we can come back on specific topics from the ones we will see today if you wish to discuss further. So Florian, you can change my slide, please. Thank you. So we will start with the key initiative of EU when it comes to young people, and this is the EU Youth Strategy 2019-2027. It's the main EU youth policy, and it's based on some key pillars, which I'll briefly named: engage, connect, and empower. It's kind of motivating words EU likes to use, to engage young people. And, it has many initiatives under the EU strategy. We'll not see all of them now, but there is a lot of things under the EU strategy. It's similar to, for example, other EU strategies like the disability strategy, EU disability strategy, which, by the way, has also references to young people. I didn't note it in my slides, but yeah, in the EU strategy for the rights of persons with disabilities, there are references to young disabled people, which is also important. For example, when it comes to employment or mobility, stuff like that. So I come back to the EU Youth Strategy. It has one of the interesting initiatives is that after a consultation with young people, they developed these 11 European youth goals. I didn't include all of them here, but some of them include things like quality employment, inclusive societies, mental health, green Europe, which is sustainable, stuff like that. So, relevant goals for young people that EU needs to achieve. And then there was, in 2022, there was the European Year of Youth. So sometimes EU dedicate years to a specific topic, not every year, but they try to do it often. And 2022 was dedicated to young people. And we were part of the initiatives and participated in all the processes, and there was a stakeholders group. So after this year, which we participated also in many meetings and things, and raised, the voice of disabled youngsters, this led to a development a bit later, so at the end of last year, of the EU Youth Stakeholders Group, which is an initiative at the moment that, different stakeholders, organizations are working together with EU, different departments, commission, parliament representatives, and so on, to address on European level youth relevant issues. We meet online, and we met also once in person this spring. In the photo here, we see a group photo of people standing and a few of them sitting. And the only ones sitting are the one in front of me, so I am visible. We were in Brussels, and yeah, we discussed the youth issues, and we meet also a few times per year online, and we see how EU is doing on youth rights. And it is the only member from the disability community, which is remarkable if you think other stakeholders that were involved in the EU policy work when it comes to young people. But only we are in the stakeholder group at the moment, and speak on behalf of disabled youth, which is also an honor, but also a commitment to make sure we do things correctly. And and it's good because he also works with us and listen to us, and we can have a significant impact. And also one interesting initiative in this framework is that the EU appointed the EU Youth Coordinator, so a person responsible only for youth issues. It's Biljana Sirakova, very nice, and we have a good partnership together. Florian, we can change the slide, please. So, yes, thank you. So a few other, now we go to a few other initiatives. Erasmus Plus is probably what is acknowledged by young people, but also by many other Europeans as the most recognizable and successful initiative of EU in general, not only for young people. Is the most, if you ask a random person in the street what is the most, I don't know, prominent EU initiatives and what and stuff, many people will say Erasmus. It's very big. At the moment is 26 billion budget for the 2021-2027 period, and the European Youth Forum is asking for this to be 5 times bigger in order to be more inclusive and support more organizations. So this is a big thing, and we see how it goes. It supports different things like exchanges, training, volunteering, and one of the initiatives is the European Solidarity Corps. So, for example, we young people can volunteer and do internships. We have a volunteer at the moment in Brussels, a disabled person who is volunteering with us under this ESC, European Solidarity Corps, and with funding from Erasmus Plus, which is very important. And we do it every year. We are one of the organizations leading in this, and we were considered a good example on European level. And there is a youth guarantee, which addresses jobs, education, or training within 4 months of leaving school, and is supporting young people to do this transition. And it targets youth unemployment, and especially needs, which basically means not in employment, education, or training. So young people who maybe don't have that big opportunities, they have this youth guarantee that supports them to get employed. Of course, I said it very briefly. Now there is much more around it. We can go to the next slide, please. So, no, that was the previous one. Exactly, thank you. There is different ways for participation and dialogue between young people and EU, and more and more things happen, which is very good. We have the EU Youth Dialogue, which is a broader ongoing consultation process with young people when young people can influence the policy of EU and have impact on what's happening from youth perspective. There is a European Commission's President's Youth Advisory Board, a relatively new initiative. So Ursula von der Leyen, our president, is having an advisory board of young people to kind of guide the work from youth perspective and give the input. It's an interesting initiative. We would like to see a bit more disabled people in all these initiatives, but that's a different discussion. However, we see some of them, which is already kind of positive. There is a lot of focus on inclusion when it comes to gender, LGBTQI, disabled people, migrants, and so on. So EU is trying to raise these issues, and they try to have diverse participations, which is great. There are some other initiatives which I just briefly mentioned here. We can discuss them at later point or in the future, like the EU Youth Scoreboard, Youth Wiki, Eurostat Youth Data for monitoring and stuff like that. And there is the and it's happening, I think every second year. So it was now in 2025. Is the European Youth Event. So it happens in Strasbourg, and it's the biggest youth event in Europe, maybe in the world, I don't know, but in Europe for sure. And it has like 10,000 participants. We had some of our members participating this year, and there is more and more disability visibility here. We go to the next slide, please. Then there are a few other initiatives that are interesting. There is the Youth Check, which I really like as an initiative, which evaluates how all EU policies impact young people. And so during different platforms and ways, citizens can check and say whether, young people, I mean, when I say citizens, can say whether some policies and EU initiatives are youth friendly or not, and, whether they are doing well or not. And then I have a small picture here saying, we EU talk, and it's about the youth policy dialogues, which is a bit different than what we saw before the EU dialogue, because youth policy dialogues are annual dialogues between young people and the EU commissioners. So it is a cycle of meeting, I don't know, every year or every some time with commissioners, with young people. So when they discuss the different issues and the different topics every commissioner takes, and every commissioner had to do it, and they did it in the first day, in the first 100 days of the year. They had to finish it this year. So it happened in different cities like Brussels, in Warsaw, in Athens, I think even. So it was a great opportunity for all commissioners, no matter if there is a commissioner for related to youth or maybe, I don't know, to economy or to agriculture or whatever. All of them discussed with young people because everything is relevant to young people. I participated in one of these policy dialogue in the past, in the previous cycle with Commissioner Dali. And yeah, disabled people usually are included, at least some. We can go to the next slide. There is a few things that gather information when it comes to and data when it comes to young people in EU. Again, very quickly and briefly, we have the EU Youth Report and EU and the Eurobarometer. So some key insights from the 2024 youth consultation, we can see that 61%, for example, of young people were optimistic about the EU future, and they think that main strength of Europe is, for example, freedom of movement. Young people like to move abroad. This is not always the case for young disabled people, and very often we don't have specific data on how young disabled people see things. And when we have data about youth, we sometimes don't have data about disabled youth, which is sometimes can be significantly different. There are different priorities according to young people that you should focus. And that are relevant for them. This is cost of living, housing, which is very normal, I guess. Peace and security, young people are concerned about these things. Mental health and access to health in general, jobs, climate change, I didn't include it here, but climate change and green transition comes always very high in youth discussions. And also in this report, there is these things, and this report support youth-centered decision-making and public debate, which is very important. And also the European Youth Forum had an interesting report, which, among other things, said that young people said in this consultation they had that they place Erasmus as one of the super important thing in when it comes to the EU. But interestingly, even though the budget is increasing compared to the past, the organization accessing Erasmus are less. It's decreasing because it becomes very complicated for organizations to do it. You need to be skilled and to have knowledge to apply for Erasmus program. So youth-led organizations that are based on volunteering, they cannot really compete. I mean, we are one of the lucky ones that we get some access, but believe me, it's quite tough to get funding from Erasmus sometimes. We'll go to the next slide. I am close to finishing, I guess. Yeah, there are some EU funding opportunities for youth, of course. That's a few of them I mentioned here. There are, of course, more. The Erasmus Plus grants, as I said, which foster mobility, youth exchanges, training process. The European Solidarity Corps, which we already said, when you can go and do volunteering or I don't know, for education. Horizon Europe, which is relevant also for young people and supports research and innovation, scholarship for young scientists, among other things. Discovery EU, a project which I personally also was involved in order to be in the consultation and the stakeholders groups to make it more inclusive, which offers free rail passes for 18-year-olds to explore Europe. And we made sure it's inclusive and you can take a PA and have your access needs met, and you can see yourself reflected in the material also, because we never saw disabled people there, and we said how youngsters with disabilities will say this is for them if they never see a disabled person in the pictures and the videos. So they listened to us and they did it. And there are other funding opportunities also for people in Eastern Partnership countries and so on. There is some typo here, sorry for that. Yeah, we can go to the next slide. So this is the almost last slide. I think the next one is the last. So very briefly, youth relevant EU initiatives that are not exclusively focused on youth. I start with one that is the EU strategy on intergenerational fairness. This is important because it's a new initiative. The last year in September, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the European Commission, asked the Commissioner for Intergenerational Fairness, Youth, Culture and Sport, Glenn Micallef. So he is the one, the commissioner that is relevant to youth issues. And as you see in the name of the commissioner title, it starts with intergenerational fairness, youth, culture, and sport. She asked him to develop and prepare a strategy on intergenerational fairness to map out how we can strengthen communication between generations and ensure that interests of present and future generations are respected throughout our policy and lawmaking. So it is a combination of young people, but also other generation, and the commissioner mentioned it a lot of times, and they put a lot of effort recently in EU on this strategy. And of course, it concerns young people. The European Green Deal, as I said before, when we talk about climate and sustainability, young people are on the forefront. So this is always relevant to young people. And very often in meetings, you see young people representing the organization. Digital Europe and Digital Education Action Plan. Again, when we come to technology and digital, EU, young people are on the forefront. EU mental health strategy, again, it's very relevant for young people. We saw earlier in the barometer, Eurobarometer, mental health comes high when it comes to EU, to youth priorities. The European Pillar of Social Rights is always relevant also for young people. The Next Generation EU and Recovery and Resilience Facility cannot be relevant for young people, and they work with the organizations and the initiatives. Then different projects like Creative Europe and Horizon Europe, and there was also this conference on the future of Europe where there was important for young people to engage, and I think there was even some quotas. I don't want to say something which I'm not 100%, but I know that a significant number of young people were engaged. And the last slide, even though we talk about youth relevant initiatives, I have a quickly slide about initiatives beyond EU and not only EU, because some of you are not in EU countries, and we have many members that are not only in EU, but are also relevant for everyone. So, for example, Council of Europe do a very good job with young people. There is co-management, there is Advisory Council of Youth, and young people pretty much co-manage the work of Council of Europe. There is the European Youth Centers in Strasbourg and in Budapest. We have been in both, and as ENIL, we do things like also the study sessions. There is the European Youth Foundation, which gives support for youth initiatives, financial support, and ENIL also benefits at the moment. There are manual and toolkits that are developed to support young people, youth work, and youth organization. There are different partnerships between Council of Europe and the European Commission. Again, for some reason, I don't know. Sorry for the forgetting of the word. I realize it now; it's not here, so it should say European Commission. There is a strong partnership, and the Council of Europe and Commission do initiatives. Then we have the OECD Youth Action, European Youth Card Association, and of course the European Youth Forum, which represents the interest of young people all over Europe. I stop here. I'm already over time, so thank you for your attention, and I pass the floor, I don't know, directly to Ines or to moderator Florian. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamil. I think I will continue right away after you, as we are a bit short on time. So after these rich presentations from Florian and Kamil, which were really about the current policy developments at the EU level, I'm going to talk a little bit about ENIL's work, and it's more about what we are planning next. So just like the EU has its different strategies, we of course also have our own strategic plan, which was just adopted a couple of months ago by our General Assembly. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the policy initiatives within our strategic plan. Next slide, Florian, please. Yes, just to say, before, of course, getting into what we're planning, the strategic plan looks at the barriers to independent living, which we've gathered from our members. And I just wanted to highlight some of these new threats that we are dealing with, which add to the usual barriers to independent living, such as the lack of support, stigma, the lack of accessibility of mainstream services. So these new threats are, for example, the rise of the right-wing politics, the increasing number of conflicts, and the economic downturns which together, coupled with austerity measures, lead to regression of rights in the countries in Europe. Then we continue to see misappropriation of the concept of independent living, which now really is widely referred to and used. And we can see, for example, that almost all of the European Union presidencies are now doing something around independent living. All the organizations are working on independent living, which is good, of course, because it means that they recognize there is a need to improve people's access to rights. But it is of concern when by independent living they still mean investing in segregated settings or in, for example, restricting legal capacity or in other way actually restricting rights rather than providing people with choice and control. And the other third threat is the increasingly difficult access to funding for disability rights in Europe, which of course has an impact on all of the civil society, and it means that we can do less regardless of these new threats and increasing needs actually for human rights work. Next slide. So just as a way of introduction, our strategic plan is based on the independent living pillars. We have 18 of them, and I'm not going to go through them, but they cover all the preconditions for independent living. Of course, they are based on the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, and many of them are actually a subject of EU laws and policies, such as accessibility, such as employment, such as healthcare, such as transport, of course, access to housing. So everything we do is in some way intertwined with European Union laws and policies. Next slide, please. We also have decided to work using these horizontal elements, which is first of all trying to use as much as possible the intersectional perspective. So, for example, looking at how independent living relates to and what access to independent living people have regardless of their age, whether it is young age, as Kamil was talking about, youth, or older people or older age. Whether it's about people of racialized backgrounds, from the LGBTIQ communities, people with different kinds of impairments. So trying to really make sure that independent living is for everyone. We are also looking at independent living in emergencies simply because there is a need. we have, other than, of course, the conflict, such as the war in Ukraine, we have also climate emergencies more and more often, which do impact on independent living. And the third horizontal element is the globalization of independent living. And that comes with the recognition that we need to be sensitive to different traditions, different cultures, and really listen to people's concerns, and try to explain the concept of independent living to people coming from very different backgrounds and living in very different circumstances. And this relates to not so much our work in Europe, but to our work globally, where we work with organizations also in, for example, Southeast Asia or the Global South in general. Next slide, please. This is just like Kamil was mentioning, the EU strategy has different themes. Our strategic plan has 5 fields of action. That is change, organize, inform, capacity, strengthen, and evolve, and which altogether spells choice. And I will just say a bit before, for 5 minutes, about the change, the field of action change. Next slide, please, which is really about the policy work. So among our strategic objectives, we have advocating for the adoption and enforcement of new laws and policies. And here, as my colleagues mentioned, so we are waiting for and trying to influence the next half of the European Disability Rights Strategy, and trying to see and influence what the new initiatives will be, because we have none at the moment. And we want to make sure, of course, that the new initiatives somehow feed into the right to independent living. There will also be a new action plan under the European Pillar of Social Rights. And again, it's very important that the actions support the right to independent living. Our next strategic objective is better access to personal assistance and other community-based services. And here, of course, comes money that is available to the member states from the European Union to put in place community-based services, and to fund them, to pilot them, but also to ensure to build them into their systems, to ensure their long-term sustainability. So here, of course, we have the European semester, which sets priorities. We have the new EU budget, which is currently being negotiated. And we hope will not be just a free-for-all for member states, but will come with certain conditions so that they are forced to, in a way, use it to support independent living. We also have the European Care Agenda, which is not always very helpful for us, because it also includes residential care as an option. But it's something we have to work with and try to make sure that it actually supports the development of user-led community-based services. Then we have, and this comes with our strategic objective also of tracking public investment. Our next strategic objectives are renewed commitment to deinstitutionalization, and with that, a paradigm shift from the medical to social and human rights approach. And here we will be working on state aid rules, also public procurement, but also possibly the EU deinstitutionalization action plan, as this apparently might be one of the initiatives of the European Disability Rights Strategy. And there was recently a debate in the Parliament about it. Then, as the topic we started with today, legal capacity, we will work on promoting supported decision making. And here we plan to continue engaging with this proposal for cross-border protection, but also possibly try to change the Hague Convention itself, as it is an old instrument not aligned with the convention. We also plan to promote accessible and affordable non-segregated housing. Here, of course, we have the European Affordable Housing Plan coming up, and there will be a lot of investments in housing. The other strategic objectives to work more on inclusive education. Here, the EU has limited limited competence, but we do have the EU Child Guarantee, and under the youth strategy, of course, as Kamil was mentioning, there is also education is covered as well. Plus, there are many initiatives around higher education and also within Erasmus Plus. Then we also plan to engage with promote independent living in emergencies. Here comes the external action funding, also Ukraine facility, and how that what is being supported as part of that. We have to continue working on the freedom of movement because that's not a chapter that's been closed. We have the European Disability Card, but it will have limited impact on the freedom of movement. And there was a promise of some sort of follow-up to that, so we need to continue working on that. And finally, we have these intersectional objectives like working against hate crime, also promoting co-production, developing alliances. And here we need to engage with the other strategies that we have at EU level, such as the anti-racism strategy or the gender equality strategy, working with the disability platform. These are just some. There are more, of course, many more strategies at EU level, as Kamil mentioned, the European Youth Strategy, for example. But we have to also target those that are most relevant because we have limited capacity. But it might provide ideas for others here of what they can do. And the final slide, Florian. And some of the key activities, so we will be working on the European Pact on Independent Living because we also want to still tackle this misappropriation of the term of independent living and also offer some, get more political commitment from the EU institutions, but also the member states. I would like to highlight also we need we plan to continue providing technical assistance, especially around personal assistance and deinstitutionalization. We need to identify and promote good practices more and more. We need to better show how independent living can be done. So we will do that. We also plan to develop some measurable indicators. We plan, and this is something new, we plan also going with the need to show more good practice, but also to give disabled people an opportunity to share information about what's happening in their countries. We plan to publish more of the reports, more information about the state of independent living and focusing on different topics based on the independent living pillars. And finally, we plan to continue submitting complaints to especially challenging human rights abuses in the EU and Europe in general. And yeah, of course, we need to regularly assess whether what we are doing is having any impact. So this is a little bit about our priorities in terms of policy work, and you can find the link to the strategic plan. I can also post it in the chat. So with that, it's just 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock. No, I'm on a different time zone, so I don't know what is the time.
It's 12.
It's 12.
Central
I'm
Europe.
completely confused.
No.
I'm in Romania at the moment. Here it's 1 o'clock. Go ahead. So I'll hand over to you, Florian.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so these were our presentations. We thank you for listening, and now we open the floor to questions, comments. If you don't want to talk, you can write your question in the chat. Yeah, we can also go back in the presentations. If you want us to explain something a bit more, you can also share experiences. Like, why is leaving capacity important for you? Or, yeah, do you have ideas about the strategic plan, other topics we should focus on? Yeah. You don't have to ask, also, you don't have to ask questions. That's fine too. Maybe let's everybody. Oh, there's a new post. No, no, there isn't. Ah, I thought somebody had written something in the chat. Yeah, maybe we give. Okay. Um, I want to know how long Kamil will be young for all intents and purposes, and if the formula is secret or can it be shared. Kamil, are you forever young?
My beloved Pep, welcome, welcome. I'm not young anymore. I'm 37, so I don't have any secret. I get old. But I mean, I support our youth, but I am not young myself anymore. I feel young, and I think we all feel young, you included. And yeah, maybe I don't know if you want, Pep. You can also share your work you do on supported decision making in Girona, because this is something that Florian talked in the beginning, and you do a very good job there. So maybe you would like to say a few things how you work on the topic.
Permeteu un moment. Yes, thank you, Camille. If you don't mind, I can share a little bit about my experience in the transition from substitute decision making to supported decision making that has been take place in Spain and Catalonia. First of all, the change start before the legal change. Many organizations that at that time provided guardianship as a social service, with a special characteristic that in Spain there were just one opportunity, one circumstance that allows some organization to provide that service. There is no professional guardians. You just can be guardian before, and in the former law, if you were a relative or you have a consistent previous relation with the person that must be supported, or must be an NGO non-for-profit from 1983. That creates a network of a very large network of organizations providing guardianship as a social service. And in many parts of Spain, that service was funded, and especially in Catalonia, was funded for granted because it was considered a right to every person that if you cannot manage alone your decisions or your interests, that somebody must support you. When many of that organizations, especially maybe mine, Support Girona, were aware of the absolutely lack of fundamental under the UN CRPD of all the system of guardianship, we started changing the practice from inside, still receiving guardianship appointments, but enabling the people to decide for themselves if they have some interest or some special consideration about any kind of decisions. And we started in 2014. We established an internal policy allowed by our board of trustees, and they trust me that the future was supported decision making and not remain in the all forms of guardianship. And we start, well, I was working in a special environment in a region in Catalonia where we don't have long-term institutional in mental health. We don't have in mental health, especially, we don't have residential settings. We have a strong network for support individuals in the community living normally in shared flats, but they deciding for themselves with who, being the entitled person of the contract of rent, um, agreeing between the people that are co-living all the terms of the convivence, everything. Mm, they have the keys, and providing them individualized support. That means the support follows the person when the person changes the place of living. Well, in that special environment, we started promoting schemes of supported decision making that were allowed in the Catalan Civil Code from 2011. That means really establishing an alternative to guardianship, and guardianship or partial guardianship or curatorship was just a way to support people when they are in extremely social exclusion, and the social services ask the court to do something. Normally, then we were appointed as guardians or curators, but we work ignoring the court resolution. We work establishing the basis of, hello, we are here to support you. What do you want to do? We will be keep in, with you. Doesn't matter your circumstances. Doesn't matter if you are living in the street. You don't have employment. You have, or absolutely the contrary. You are marrying. You are having a baby, etc. And we start a way of doing that. That was the fundamental for the politics to understand that they must change the legislation. We were part of the partnership to promote the legal reform. The legal reform ends last many years of combating the resistance, but at the end entering force the 3rd of September of 2021, and we don't have guardianship anymore in Spain. And in Catalonia, the system to provide support to some individual could be free established by the person in a notary, or the person is entitled to go to the court and say, I need support, I want to be supported by that person or that organization. In the case that there is an organization that is granted public funded, that enables a strong social support. We have a lot of professionals that can guide and support the people in all kinds of circumstances, when they want to leave parents' home, when they are homelessness and want to access to some kind of housing, if they want to be in contact with the mental health network, or if they don't want, we still keep working with them in these circumstances and offering them services that maybe are non-coercitive, the free access and free exit to provide them basic needs. And that system has worked. I think it works. Now we are in a small region, we are less than 800,000 people. We receive one new case per working day. And 75% of these new cases are absolutely and completely demanded by the person. The person receives advice from social workers in the municipalities, especially social workers in the mental health network or in the disability service systems. And when they see that they are alone and they don't have enough support to manage some special circumstances of their life, they suggest, well, you don't know Supergirona team, and you start talking with them how you want to live, or what do you think you need, and establishing a support agreement with them. I repeat, one new case per working day under this basis, and we just consider new case when the person has agreed to receive support, and it's working. It's working. I cannot say that that is general in all Spain or Catalonia. I can say that many of the organizations have made this transition in the fundamentals and concepts of their work. Normally we work under support agreements that are freely changed by the person every day if they want. We have a platform to organize these agreements that the person can change us with a voice WhatsApp message. Yesterday I said that I wanted to save because I want to spend holidays in my family city in the south of Spain. But this night I have changed, and now I don't want to save. That means I prefer to spend all my money for X any circumstance in the life. Okay, we respect that. Of course, if you decide to spend all your money, then can happen that you cannot pay your bills. We will be there to support you in that circumstance, but of course, the decision is yours. At the end, when there is trust, normally we arrive to a consensus with the person about everything about the life of the people. Everything means everything. I've been supporting directly people in their process to be a mom, person with disability, intellectual disability, and physical disability too, that was pregnant and decided to go on alone without partner with that. But we are working with her in that, or people that has decided to make a transition of gender, being a person with intellectual disability, understanding that the system will be against your decision and you have to fight a little bit for every step, but at the end you have the right to receive in Spain public support, medical support to do that transition if that is your identity. But overcoming breaking the barriers that these kind of processes everywhere still has, because the mentality of the doctors and the medical sector is not open to do that, is something that we do, and we have succeeded in that. UN recognizes us in their report on the Sustainable Development Goals as a success in sexual and reproductive rights for our work in breaking the barriers in this kind of transition of gender when they have psychosocial disabilities or intellectual disabilities. We have several cases that they are working with their new condition, fully participating in society. Well, this is what we do, and of course we are open to discuss and to cooperate with everybody in that terms. I think in the first presentation, somebody talks about the work of Teresa de Gener, the former president of the UN CRPD committee. We have been working with her and many people that has participated in the legal reform in Germany, partial legal reform, but closer to the standards. And we are open to collaborate with everybody in this field. Legal capacity, supported decision making, supported for independent living. We are working on that because our knowledge in supported decision making includes all the system of support and benefits and how to provide to get funding for your needs. Is not a complete system. We still lack more flexibility and more capacity to really fund independent living schemes. Yesterday, the Spanish government approved a reform of the disability law and the dependency law, that is the law that funds most of the services for all kinds of persons with disability, including elderly people, and they include our positioning on personal budgets to enable personal assistance schemes. If you are entitled to receive institutional care, that means thousands of euros, you can decide use that euros. You will be able to decide when the new legislation will enter in force after of hope and parliament agreement. You will be able to decide the same amount of money that maybe the government is open to spending in an institution that normally are more expensive than independent living schemes, to use buying the services you want at
Pep,
home.
Pep,
Well,
thank
I
you.
talk a lot. Sorry.
Thank
Thank you very much for supporting me.
Thank you so much for that. But let's give other people a chance if they also want to
Perfect. Thank you.
comment or ask a question.
Just to say that thank you, Pep. You do a lot of great work, and we should be in touch in the future and see what we can do together, because many of these things are relevant for ENIL and for the independent living community. So we should connect, and I think we will connect in Brussels. Your colleagues are coming in the next days, so we might meet. But yeah, Florian, I give the floor back to you.
Thank you. Thanks, Kamil. I don't really think there are questions or comments from the audience. So if there's no objection, I think we can also close our policy brief. Are there any objections? Ines, Kamil, no objections?
No, if there's no questions, Florian, I think it was a lot of information, and people can check the recording again if anything was unclear. And also thank you to Pep. That was very interesting to hear about developments in Spain.
Yes, thanks again, Pep. We might be indeed in touch, because we are thinking maybe producing a report next week about not next week, next year, about good practice examples when it comes to legal capacity. And it shows, it seems you are working on an interesting thing there in Catalonia. Yes, okay. I thank you all for participating in our policy brief. The recording will be available online or on YouTube. And hoping to see you next time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Have a
Thanks,
good day.
everyone. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Goodbye.
Bye.